Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Ritney Castine with Truth Initiative. So I'm the Managing Director there of Community and Youth Engagement. And part of what I do is oversee our youth activism programs as well as our efforts to work with colleges, particularly historically Black colleges and universities. We also have an initiative that works with community colleges in getting them to adopt comprehensive tobacco-free policies, as well as have some activism efforts and engagement and education efforts on their respective campuses. With the youth activism program, we have a few different things. One, we provide technical assistance to states and state programs and youth groups on how to effectively work with youth and young adults. For 15 to 18-year-olds, we have a National Youth Summit. So each year we bring together, last year it was, it needs to be 100 or so, so send some positive thoughts my way to make sure I can make it. But up to 100 young people from across the country for a week-long intensive training on activism, on the issue, on how to engage their community and people of influence in it to advance a health initiative, particular around tobacco control. And then we also have a youth activism fellowship program for 18 to 24-year-olds, where we have them come on board with us for a year. A cohort of them this year is 30 youth activists from 23 states, plus the District of Columbia, to be a part of an elite group of people receiving specialized training from us. So it's really fun. It's really great. And I'm excited to certainly be a part of that. And I'm excited to be here with you all. I was last in Denver, man, when I was in high school. And y'all looking at me, I just shaved. So I was in high school in 2003. So it's been a little while. And every time I come here, you know, it feels really good. I have to have this water, though, because I'm learning. You know, the air is a little bit drier here. I'm from Louisiana, so everything is humid and wet. As soon as you walk outside, it's like, wow, it hits you. So just bear with me if you see me just kind of sipping on my water here. Then I had the IT guy come in. You know, I know that we're live streaming, so hello to everybody who's live streaming this morning. But I had to make sure that I was able to see myself in this camera, because I didn't want anything strange to be on my face and the people on camera see it. You know, because y'all wouldn't tell me about it, I'm sure. Y'all just let me go on and on and on. You know, my journey in tobacco control is interesting. I've been involved since I was a 10-year-old kid in Louisiana. I shared with some of the young people yesterday that I got my start in the Boys and Girls Club, like many of them in the room yesterday did as well. You know, I got involved because in Louisiana, particularly in the community where I grew up, family was incredibly important. It had to be. There were only 600 people in the whole town. And so, you know, family was particularly important.
This just started.
I think I hear the people here talking back to me. I don't know if it's supposed to happen like that. Family was particularly important. And I had an uncle that all of us looked up to. It was, you know, somebody, it was technically a great uncle, my grandfather's brother, and all of us thought he was just great. He was somebody who had his own business. He was a Marine. He was big and strong. And I saw him go from being a big, strong, independent individual to being somebody who was little and scrawny and dependent on other people to do simple tasks like wash his own face and feed himself. And I learned that was because of his lifelong addiction to tobacco use. He smoked a pack and a half of Camel non-filter cigarettes every day, ultimately until his death. And I got involved with a group called Teens Against Tobacco Use at the Boys and Girls Club. And from there, we just went on and on and on. We made some policy change happen in our local community, and we went to neighboring communities and partnered with them to do some things about clean indoor air, to do some things about, you know, trying to restrict access for young people. And it was great. Later on, working in Louisiana, you know, a group of young people got together and led the efforts to repeal preemption so that the communities could make stronger laws than our very, very weak state law. And then, I don't know if y'all remember this because this was a long time ago, but in Louisiana and certainly other places in the country, there was this thing called smoking sections in restaurants. Y'all remember that? You know, people could sit down at a table and eat their food and smoke at the same time. And strangely enough, there are still places in this country where that still happens. What about here in Colorado? Can you do that here? I didn't think so. Yeah, in Mississippi you can. I found out the hard way about 2 weeks ago. They still do that. I walked in, I said, do y'all still do that? Who does that? But a group of teens that I pulled together led the effort to, ban smoking in public places, including restaurants. And so that was a big deal because we were flanked by the lieutenant governor and the attorney general and all kinds of people of importance. And I stood there as a snotty-nosed teenager and said, you know what? A smoking section in a restaurant is like a peeing section in a swimming pool, and we don't want either of those. and as interesting of a statement as that is, if you think about it long enough, but not too long, it's true. And that really helped change the momentum with respect to that race. Why did I say all of this? Well, I say all of this because young people are an untapped asset, believe it or not. They have some vitality, they have some commitment, they have some energy that is just unmatched by adults who are all well-intentioned. But I want to talk today about sort of best practices in youth engagement. I want to talk about the importance of using and utilizing young people as assets in getting the job done. I shared yesterday with the young people is that, one of the great things that we sort of talk about all the time at Truth Initiative is the fact that today smoking rates are at historic lows. It's true. In the year 2000, smoking rates were at 23%. And today, teen smoking rates were at 23%. And today, teen smoking rates are at 7%. There's no denying that that's great news. But there's going to be a reason why we won't get it any further than that. And we won't get it any further than that until we tap into those really, really difficult to reach communities, including, LGBT, including Native American, American Indians, including, other communities of color, including some rural places that are difficult to move. And so in order to do that, we got to do some stuff that we haven't really tried in the last 60 years, which is to fully tap into our youth market. And so that's my little introduction. Now, the very next thing to do, and I know that most of you in the room know each other, and I know that, typically when you do little icebreaker activities that are cute and fun, that it's only for the benefit of the facilitator. I already know that. But I'm the facilitator, and I want to benefit from that because every other facilitator has benefited from it. And so if you can just indulge me, and I know that there may be a little noise that the live folks would hear, but if you could just indulge me for about 3 to 4 minutes and just meet some different people and do this little cute little activity. I want you to say who you are and why you're here and just a few things that you plan to do when you go back home, whether home is really your home or home is your work because you spend so much time there. So if you can just indulge me for the next 3 minutes and just get up and move around and talk to some folks that you haven't talked to before. Everybody's like, aww. Y'all are cheating. Take about 1 more minute. Take about 1 more minute. All right, take about 30 more seconds. All right.
Very exciting.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I like to do that. One, to kind of get some conversations going in the room, and sometimes we take for granted the fact that everybody knows each other. But two, I like to do that because I don't know, I just find, and it could be me, it could be a Southern Louisiana thing, but I just find that public health, and particularly those of us who work on tobacco, is just like a family reunion type thing every time we get together. You know, we get to share some stories about things that we're working on. We get to talk about, you know, some of the struggles and issues that we're trying to navigate, and it sort of encourages us as we go back home to do this work that's extremely important, but also extremely hard. So I like to do that, and thank you so much for indulging me. So here's how the little outline is going to go. I'm going to talk about, you know, youth engagement. I'll define it at some point. I'll talk about, make the case for why young people should be involved and strategically utilized to further your goals. I'll talk and discuss some levels of youth engagement, because there are levels, and we recognize that there are going to be individuals and groups of people who will be at different points of readiness on sort of the spectrum of youth engagement. I'll talk about a little bit about youth and adult partnerships and how that is key, and some appropriate roles for young people and for adults to sort of further move their collective agendas. And then I just kind of want to have maybe a brief 2-minute conversation towards the end with everybody to see, because the other thing is I recognize many of you in your current roles may or may not work with young people. So let me do a poll. How many currently work with young people through their scope of work? Oh, that's pretty good. All right. How many want to, but it's just not a part of what your scope is? And how many think young people are just incredibly useless and would not be? You like how I set that one up? All right. Excellent. So when we look at why youth engagement, there are really 3 points that I'd like to sort of bring up for this. Three particular points. 1, for the young people themselves. 2, for this movement, this issue of tobacco control, and then 3, for change generally. And when we look at tobacco control as an issue for young people, 1, it gives them an opportunity to have something that they can take leadership over. The truth of the matter is, and we said this on yesterday, but we already know it, the tobacco industry needs young people to be replacement smokers. And one of the things that we can do is empower this generation of youth and young adults to to use that information, the fact that they need to be used as replacement smokers, to turn that around and have them to be and serve as the best activists, the best advocates for change. They can take that and know that they have a target on their back, and in turn use that information to reject tobacco ultimately, and then also mobilize their peers in getting them involved. As cool as I think I am, as cool as many of us think that we are, no one is more influential to young people than their peers, other than grandmothers. Grandmothers are incredibly, they are, grandmothers are back cool, you understand, and this is for real. I'm serious. And so, as cool as we think we are, as great as we think we are, as knowledgeable as we are in the subject, no one moves young people like other young people, for good or for bad. No one moves young people like other young people. And then, for tobacco control, we need to, as hard of an issue as this is, we need to continue to create a pipeline of youth leadership development. Again, many of us have been involved for years and years and years, sort of at the top of our games in our fields, but we need to sort of intentionally reach back and ensure that there are young people who are coming through who care about this. Frankly, there are a lot of things in the world that people can care about, right? There is, particularly when we look here at Colorado, when you layer on the new issue of marijuana and the restrictions or the ease of restrictions there, and what that means for public health or what it doesn't mean. Maybe I'm making assumptions. But, that adds a different layer. And when you look at the news and watch the news, there are all sorts of movements happening. There are all sorts of social justice things that are happening when you deal with either relations with police or deal with poor educational systems, when you deal with mass incarceration. There are thousands of things that folks can focus on. And as people focus on all that other stuff, which is great, we want them to focus on our issue as well. Because even still today, tobacco use is the #1 cause of preventable death and disease in this country, killing almost 500,000 Americans per year. And unless we continue to build that leadership pipeline and bringing some young people along with us in this journey, we won't see the change that we know we need to make that public health impact in a serious and important way. And then for change generally, one of the things that's absolutely true is that what you learn in tobacco control, what you learn in public health broadly, can be transferred to other things. When you look at sort of the obesity movement right now, right, the obesity prevention movement, I should say, a lot of the sort of best practices that are being used in the obesity prevention movement are very similar to the best practices that folks have used in the tobacco prevention movement for the last 50 years. Why? Because some of those things, many of those things are transferable skills. When you look at some of the other things that may come up, like the issues with marijuana, there are some lessons learned from the tobacco prevention and control movement that can probably be applied to the issues associated with marijuana and all of these other drugs that are becoming issues on the rise in the country. There are lessons learned that we can take because this is, again, what we learn are transferable. And so we should engage young people right now, early on, because some of what we can teach them, particular to what we do, particular to what our priorities are, can in turn be utilized and transferred to some other thing that they care about more. So, activism. You're going to hear me talk a lot about activism. I wanted to throw a definition out there so that we can sort of be on the same page and have a working definition for activism. But activism, as I define it, is the process of taking action to address a problem or an issue, right? Really simple, really clear-cut. But activism, to me, is a process. It is just not haphazard. You don't just fall into activism. You don't just make noise to make noise. You don't just do one-offs to do one-offs. But activism, as I define it for us today, is a process of taking action to address a problem or issue. And so as you engage young people in different activism projects, you should do that in a way that's strategic to your overall goal, whether it is, if you're addressing in this state tobacco 21, so raising the age of purchase to 21, or whether it is, y'all like that, I saw a lot of heads nod. I've been doing some of my homework, or whether it is at the local level in, dealing with retailer licensing, whatever it is the priority is, there are ways to engage young people and have them make some noise and have them, create a ruckus, have them talk about urination in swimming pools, but do it in a way that connects to an issue, right? Clearly, the reason why I gave that as an example is because you can't, you shouldn't talk about that unless it means something. And so, whenever we engage young people, it should be strategic. It should be in a way that connects to our broader program goals. Particularly with youth activism, particularly with youth activism, there are different ways that I think that they can be involved and that they've demonstrated sort of consistently across the country from what I've seen, ways that they can sort of take leadership or have very defined roles with respect to their relationship with youth. And one way is through policy enforcement advocacy. So a lot of young people are sort of doing work through the lens of the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, going and do some retailer checks to see if those retailers are acting responsibly and ensuring that they're carding anybody who looks like they're under the age of 30. In many instances, we're finding out that there are some retailers who are not acting responsibly, who are selling products to people who are 15 or 16 years old. But they can certainly take a leadership role in that. They can do that. If you're over 30 and you go to purchase cigarettes and they sell it to you, that means absolutely nothing, right? But if you're 15 and you try and purchase cigarettes and they sell it to you, that raises a red flag. That's a huge problem. Media advocacy. One of the things that we know is that young people are incredibly innovative, and they have the power of the world sitting right in their hands. This is cell phones and social media and media as a whole is a different phenomenon, and it opens up sort of endless opportunities for them to make some noise, for them to have their stuff go viral, for them to have people in all parts of the state working simultaneously on an issue. They can take that and they can do some things in a way that we couldn't do just 10 years ago. And they're tangible. There are a host of examples, and I'll share one or two of them a little bit later, where young people have used the power of media to move people, to shift opinions, and to also influence policy change in their respective local communities. I touched on the next point a little bit earlier in the fact that they can mobilize and move around their peers and as well as some partners, because they have the energy, they have the vitality, they have the commitment to sort of get this done. This is our job for us, and we try our best to do it as best as we can. And we were talking yesterday, we like to go, and I'm not, don't get this wrong, But we typically use a lot of best practices in our work because we know that that's pretty much going to work, right? It's been tested, it's been tried, it's been true. Young people don't care anything about that. They have an entrepreneurial spirit about themselves and are willing to, that was a nice way of putting the fact that they're going to do what they want to do, regardless of how proven or not it is. And sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. I'll give you an example. I remember in 2001 at the National Tobacco Conference, the National Conference on Tobacco or Health was held in San Francisco, California. And this was around the same time that Philip Morris was sort of rebranding and doing some spin-offs and becoming the Altria Group. And part of that was because, they had some financial pieces to it, but the other part was because they felt as though they needed a makeover. Everybody knew who Philip Morris was. Nobody knew who Altria was. They wanted to have an opportunity to sort of remake their brand and their name in the community and across the country. And so we were all mad about it. Everybody who was involved in tobacco control was a little bit miffed at it. At the time I was in high school and a youth advocate for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, who later on hired me, so yes, thank you so much for that. And Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, I love them to death, great place. But they created a flyer that was black and white and had a picture of a snake on it. And it said, no matter, I remember it, I still have it, and I still have the little snake that they gave us. No matter how many times a snake sheds its skin, it's still a snake. And, the young people who were at the conference were like, meh, okay, that's cute or whatever. Some of the adults were like, oh, that's radical. And we were like, not quite. It doesn't quite meet the mark for radical, but it is a good foundation for us. It gave us some key points and some information. And so a group of young people got together in the basement of the hotel where we were, and we said, we need to do something about it. People need to know that Philip Morris is turning into Altria, and they're going to be up to the same old dirty tricks. We want people to know about this. And so we got a conference call together. We called some people who were not able to be a part of the meeting in San Francisco, and one of our friends, Charlie Douglas, he's a lawyer right now, but Charlie Douglas was in Florida, Yulee, Florida, and he said, well, I'm just out here, I wish I could help you, but I'm on the farm, and the only thing that I have is cow patties. And we said, Charlie, you're a genius. He said, what? Cow patties is, cow patties. We said, man, you're a genius. We want some of that. He said, what? We said, send us some of that stuff here to San Francisco. And so he went out, he got a shovel and a few garbage bags and dropped them in there and tightened it up and put it in a box and sent us cow patties from Florida to California. And, when they arrived in the lobby, the hotel staff was calling us a lot. You need to come get this box right away. Something is wrong with this box. You need to come get it right away. Yeah, and so it was interesting. And so we took that and we had some things, some flyers made at FedEx, and we went out into one of the busiest intersections. There was a park and it was high traffic. And we took the cow patties and we put them in 3 piles. We had one pile over here that said Philip Morris. We had one pile over here that said Altria. We had one pile over here, and behind it had a sign that said, same, different pile. It's the S word, in case you were wondering. In case you didn't see my little squiggly line, S is the S word. And we wrote it out, same stuff, S-H-I-T, different pile. And so that was great, because we had some young people out there who would spray it with water every now and then to make sure that it was fresh. As people passed by, to make sure that it hit their nostrils. Incredibly disgusting. None of you would have done that. No, I know it. You would have been happy with the little snake, wiggling the little snake in there. And I get it. I said that to say, that's not a best practice. And young people had no problem trying something out. It worked in tandem with what the adult coalitions were doing, We raised significant awareness. There was some media attention because of that. I mean, because who does that? Who does that? There was some media attention, and we had flyers. It wasn't just poop on the ground, but we had flyers, and we had people strategically placed in corners of the park to make sure that we were engaging properly with passersby so that they knew also what we knew, so that they had an opportunity to care about something that we cared about. It was innovative, it was interesting, it was probably illegal because we didn't have permits, but it worked. And that's tapping into the minds of young people and using them strategically to further your goals. And then finally, to expose the industry, which also goes into a little bit what I mentioned earlier. But again, they're targets. And we know this because as a result of the Master Settlement Agreement in '99, we got access to all sorts of internal documents. And even though many of the documents are from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and 80s, their attitudes and their business model hasn't really changed. And so if they had a quote that said, you know, we don't smoke it, we just sell it, we reserve that right for the young, the poor, the black, and the stupid, if they said that in the 70s, but they're still advertising their mentholated products in urban communities at extremely high levels, that means that their business model has not changed, to me. And so young people take those little stats, they take the derogatory comments that the folks who worked at the industry made about women and minorities and other people, and they use that as power to sort of create their own mini campaigns to engage their peers and to make policy change happen at the local level. So, you know, this is for me, this is just sort of how advocacy intersects. And there are different ways that young people can do what they do. One is, sorry, this should say the picture of activism. One is advocacy, and clearly advocacy is getting people to do what you need them to do, right? Whether that is through policy change, whether that is through regulation, or whether it's at the local level, whether it's at the state level, federal level, you know, there are ways to do advocacy. And advocacy is simply getting people to do what you want them to do, or something very close to what you want them to do. And it involves a give and take, and you all know that. Another one is education, simply raising the awareness about your issue, making somebody who cares nothing about tobacco control at least care a little bit, or care enough to tell somebody else. Organizing is a little bit deeper, right? Organizing involves putting people together with a central goal in mind. Organizing has many steps. It involves charting out or planning out a campaign, looking at your allies, your friends, your strengths, your weaknesses. It involves creating a timeline. It involves propping up a spokesperson. It involves creating a media relations and engagement strategy, a way that you're going to engage and mobilize the community at large. And so that's what a lot of young people tend to love to be involved with. They want to do something. You know, they're okay with getting the information, but what do I do with this information that I have? So they like to go to the next level, which is organizing. And then service. Service, as I've defined it here, is about strategically creating relationships with other organizations, partnering with them, and so you have an opportunity to focus on their issues first. And then you come back and talk about tobacco control. And that's important because as we look at this, we need to be very creative about building coalitions and working across different disciplines. It doesn't matter if you're talking to a group about nutrition and physical activity. You go and help them with their 5K first. And then you come back and you invite them to their coalition, your coalition meeting a little bit later on down the line. Because ultimately, I think when you step back a little bit, our broad goals are to have a healthier public. And, you know, their branch on the tree may deal with physical activity and nutrition. Your branch may deal with obesity. Somebody else's branch may deal with tobacco prevention. And so you kind of got to play it and work together a little bit more strategically. So, again, for young people, they're replacement smokers. For every adult who dies early because of smoking is replaced by 2 young smokers. That's a fact. We have an opportunity to engage young people and catch them while they're in their adolescence, which is a time where they're still malleable and we can sort of influence some lifelong patterns. It works for me. I was involved when I was 10 years old. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I may be a lawyer at some point. I may be a public health lawyer. You know, this was something that, for me, shaped my lifelong patterns, and the same could be said about many other young people that we work with. And certainly it cultivates future leaders and activists. For tobacco control, we know that the industry, again, spends billions of dollars marketing their products to youth. Many of those efforts are at the point of sale, so I appreciate the great work that you're doing here locally to highlight those relationships at the point of sale and highlight the fact that retail establishments can be a partner with us in sort of reducing the burden, reducing the influence of tobacco control in our communities. And again, as a target, young people can be the best spokespeople for this cause. The power of young people is incredible. I've said this word over and over again. They have energy. They have vitality. They do. They think of things sort of out of the box. They think of things that we haven't thought about, and they're willing to try just about anything to sort of get the job done. Sometimes we got to step back and just let them do it. You know, give them $20 so that they can go to FedEx and have some stuff printed and get some markers. Give them some pizza and some water and stuff like that, and just let them do it. Let them plan. Let them get together. Let them have an opportunity to make their creative juices flow. And stand back and give them some gentle guidance so that, you know, that there are some sort of boundaries put up. But other than that, let them go. Let them work. They have diverse views and insight. We may be thinking one way, they may be thinking something else. And here's what's important. They have a powerful voice that reflects genuine concern. They are involved with this because they care. They could be doing anything else. They could be doing band, cheerleading, and anything else. And they may be doing that simultaneously with working with us. They're involved because they want to be involved. And so, you know, we have to tap into that. And you know who responds well to that? People of influence like legislators and members of city councils and stuff. They reflect pretty positively to young people who are able to articulate their ideas and their concerns in a way that adults don't necessarily do so. So I said all of that, and I told you I would eventually define youth engagement. So here it is. Youth engagement is the opportunity for young people to gain both the ability and the authority to make decisions. And I have those words sort of underlined because, you know, it's not necessarily clear-cut, but young people should at least have the ability and authority to make decisions. And sometimes that decision could be, you know, when a community event will be, or who a particular speaker is, or, you know, how you plan to do some media outreach. Give them that opportunity to be involved in the decision-making process. I was somewhere, and I was at training in another state, sort of sitting there and gaining insight from that community. And one of the things that they said was that if you are not at the table, you must be on the menu. And I thought, oh, wow, that's profound. Let me spill that and act like I made it up. But I'm not going to do that. You know, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So bring them to the table. Because if not, you know, they're clearly the ones who would be affected the most by this. So this is... on the screen, you'll find what is called transitions in youth engagement. I won't go through every single one of them because I do want to make sure that we have some time to answer questions and do a little bit of back and forth. Clearly, on the left-hand side of the screen is not where you want to be. On the right-hand side is sort of what the transition is. So the mindset would transition from seeing young people as problems to seeing them as assets, to seeing them as assets, from seeing them as tokens, just so that you can say that you have a youth member of your coalition, but you have your coalition meeting at 1 o'clock in the afternoons on Wednesdays while they're in school. No, that's a token situation, right? You just have their name down there, and there's no way that they can really be meaningfully involved. To seeing them as partners, to giving them a role, to giving them some responsibilities, and for you to have some back and forth and to do some check-ins there. I'm going all the way down to, you know, just looking at fighting smoking to fighting pro-tobacco influences, which is why, you know, Tobacco 21 and the local retailer strategy is important because it's broader than looking at smoking. You know, it takes a look at some of these other issues as well, like the point of sale, you know, and sort of like making sure that young people are not using nicotine while their brain is continuing to develop. And it's sort of a puzzle. It's sort of a balance. It's a strategy, and not everybody's going to get it right? Not everybody is going to be sort of at the top of the marker here, but it's a balance of having adult input so that the efforts are intentional and so that they're organized, so that they at least make a little bit of sense, right? And then youth contribution so that the young people feel as though they're important, so that they can feel as though their work has meaning and that they are contributing to the issue, to the overall goals and strategies. So before you is a ladder on youth engagement. At the bottom of the ladder is not where you want to be. At the top of the ladder is where very, very few people are, but you know, it's aspirational. And so at the bottom is manipulation, where you tell young people, I want you involved, and you're going to do this, and you're going to have a lead key role, and then in turn you and your colleagues get together and do all the work and put the young person's name down there as if they've done it. That's not positive, and that's not going to lead to anything sustainable. Decoration, where you just have young people there, sort of sitting there, but they don't have a right or a role to contribute to the conversation, to the dialogue, to the meeting, to the goals, or anything like that. They just sit there and are good as photo ops. You drag them in to the council meetings and put them all in the same shirt as everybody else, but not one young person has an opportunity to say something. And I'm saying this not as a critic, but I'm saying this because this is what happens. This is what happens. Sometimes there's no ill intent with it, but it's just the reality of what happens. You want to take that situation and move up the ladder a little bit more, and not move up to tokenism, but move up a little bit more. The next one is tokenism. I've discussed that, where they, you have them in name only. Here's where we find many people on the ladder, where they are assigned but not informed. What that means is you give them some roles, but they don't know what their little piece does contribute to the broader movement, right? So I need you to go and make some flyers that say this. Wow, okay, they'll make some excellent flyers. They'll create some really cool designs. They'll do it incredibly well, but they don't know why they're making it. So if somebody else might ask them, okay, so what's that for? I don't know. They just told me to do it. That's where we find a lot of young people. Consulted. A lot of people think that this is the good thing, right? So you have your meetings, and then the youth have their meetings on Saturday. You drop in, you talk about, okay, guys, we're trying to raise the age of purchase to 21. What do you think about that? Oh, that's a great idea. Okay, good, I'm going. And you go back to your adult coalition meeting and say, well, I ran this by the youth, and they think it's great, so let's move on. You can see where there are gaps there. You can see why that is not the gold standard. Now, here's shared decisions where it is adult-initiated, where it's adults sort of kind of saying what's going to happen and youth responding to it. They're a little bit more informed. They're a little bit more involved. This is much more positive than manipulation, decoration, tokenism, that kind of stuff. This is where we find a lot of youth programs. Higher up is youth-initiated and directed. Well, we don't want youth on an island out there by themselves. This is a partnership. So you just can't completely let them go willy-nilly. You have to have some sort of input and influence to put some parameters around the outcomes and the goals. All the way at the top of the ladder, I know I'm going to do this kind of quickly, but all the way at the top of the ladder is sort of the gold standard, where there are shared decisions, and the youth sort of initiate how they want to be involved with that. You talk about it as a group. You lay out the full framework. You talk about what the adults will be doing, what the public health community will be doing, American Cancer, Lung, Heart, all of these folks. Talk about all of their roles and say, okay, there's a spot here for you. Tell me what you want to do, and negotiate that. Negotiate that. You don't have to sign off on everything that they say. Negotiate that. They need to understand how to put together a logical thought process and talk about how it affects the overall programming. So the gist of my presentation is really on this slide. I could have just sat this slide here and went sit down 20 minutes ago, but I didn't because I wanted to talk to you. Forget everything that you ever thought about youth and adults as separate groups and start treating each other the way you treat your peers. It's a radical, crazy idea, but it works. It works, and I mean it with all sincerity, because this is a very hard, even for me, I find myself, I work with young people all the time. I find this is hard to treat them as your peers, especially when you're responsible for their safety and all this other stuff. I get it. I get it. So this is not a facetious slide at all. But in order to get to, best practices in youth engagement, this is where it is. Treat them like you treat your peers. You don't necessarily yell at your peers and direct them haphazardly, except when things are tense and you got a grant deadline due and the computer's shut down, you yell at everybody. I get that, but I've been there before. I've been on both ends of that. And you just kind of take it and you go with it like, okay. So yeah, think about how you treat your peers, and that's how you should treat your young people. Unless they're your kids, then you have a right to parent them. But if they're not your kids, don't parent them. And so for partnerships to succeed, adults need to be willing to share responsibility. Young people need to be willing to take responsibility. If they don't want to take responsibility, then you're like, okay, well, this is not going to work. It's a relationship that's not going to work. You got to kind of continue to massage and work on helping them to strengthen up their backbone a little bit. Both need skills to work together successfully. So it is a partnership. It is a bit of give and take. And so, my advice for youth, and you can pass this along to the young people in your group, for those of you who work with youth, criticism is not dismissing. It's not the end of the world. When I tell you that that's not a good idea, I'm telling you it's not a good idea because it's not a good idea. No, because it's probably not going to work, or it does not fit well into the overall structure. I want you to come back and think of something that fits a little bit better. And to show adults what you're capable of. It's one thing to volunteer or raise your hand for stuff and then not respond when it's time for things to be due, which is typical, right? Young people are involved with stuff. They're in school from 7 in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I get it. They have busy schedules just like everybody else, but you got to prove that you're worthy to be at the table and to share in successes and failures. Now, this is my favorite one because this has the tendency to be real life, right? When things are going great, we did it. We're the young people. We were in charge. This was successful because of our efforts. When things are not going well, we did as much as we can, but the stupid adults, they didn't want to hear from that, and vice versa. We had a good plan, but the young people just messed it all up. It happens. I get it. And clearly ask for help when you need it. For adults, this is important to sort of consider. Don't expect more from you than you would from another adult. They are not superhuman. They have things that they care about. They have other responsibilities that they need to take care of. And you treat them as individuals, not as one big swap, because we tend to make broad brush strokes when we deal with young people, which is not necessarily the great thing. So treat them as individuals. Treat them as very unique people, which will help you build a really meaningful relationship with them. Show respect. I said don't parent them unless they happen to be your children. Then who am I to tell you what to do, right? That's not my place. I'm not getting involved with that. And then certainly, as similar to what I told you about youth, ask for help when you need it. Because we know and respect that you're juggling multiple things. Some of you are working on multiple issues and have, all sorts of work-related stuff going on. You need help. And young people can sort of be helpful in that. So, in closing, here's what has to be done. You got to move up the ladder. You have to be able to move up that engagement ladder to more strategically involve them in your local policy efforts, your local change efforts. And then you got to build skills to move towards an equal partnership. That just doesn't happen just because you wish it. It happens because you work for it. And you spend time with each other. You spend time getting to know each other. You spend time trying to understand each other's perspectives. And there very well may be instances where you don't agree on everything, and that's good. Not agreeing is perfectly fine, but at least you understand a little bit more their thought process and how they arrive to particular conclusions. So I'll stop here and see if anyone has any questions for me. Here's my contact information, rcastine@truthinitiative.org, in case somebody has any follow-up questions that they'd like to ask and don't really feel comfortable with asking that. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
So this is really interesting. I'm John Douglas. I'm with the Tri-County Health Department in the county adjacent to Denver. Most of the work that I've seen after public health review has been around tobacco. It's incredibly encouraging to see that happen, see the youth pipeline. I actually was trying to Google to figure out how it works.
30.
I don't know. I mean, it's great to see. I don't know whether the youth tobacco work got you where you are, but I think it's a very powerful channel. I'm curious as to whether or not there are any examples of youth engagement and other substance abuse issues. Tobacco seems particularly black and white right now. We have big tobacco that is evil. The norms are very much against smoking. Are you seeing that, or what potential do you think there is for other substances, alcohol, for example? It seems to me to be a little more ambiguous in the parade. Any thoughts about this sort of approach in other areas, particularly around substances?
Yeah, you know what, it is interesting because it's true. In tobacco control, there is an entity out there, which is the industry, and you can always play the us versus them kind of situation, which and the social justice aspect, which sort of excites young people. It's interesting you say that because now what I'm actually seeing more of that. I'm seeing more of a situation where, as we engage local groups, they're working on substance abuse stuff broadly. So they're dealing with stuff like drug prevention, alcohol prevention, teen pregnancy prevention. They're already in that space, and we come in and try and layer on tobacco work. And so and they're also dealing with working with their local municipalities. There's a group in North Carolina, for example, which is sort of different from what you're asking, but I think it's still cool to share. A group in North Carolina who is working with their city council to change the age to vote for local elections from 18 to 16, because many 16-year-olds get part-time jobs. They pay taxes and all this other kind of stuff, and they want to be able to vote on who are their school board members and who are their council persons. And so one of the reasons why they did that is because they felt as though they were left behind or left out of the discussion related to school policy. I find that to be very interesting and really radical, and I think that I wish them the best of luck in doing it. And I think more young people should think about this as a potential strategy. So I'm seeing young people being involved in, not necessarily being singularly, that's hard to say, singularly focused on tobacco control or drugs, but they're focused on, trying to better themselves, trying to have more positive attributes described or associated with them, and it's really powerful to see it. Yes, ma'am.
So how do you see vaping interacting with the smoking coalition, and how do you see the interaction at that intersection?
So that's hard. and just for full disclosure, and Jody, I work at Truth Initiative, and I'll say that the national partners are not necessarily all on the same page with the threat or perceived threat of e-cigarettes. If I wasn't streaming live, I'd just give it to you real. But I don't know who's watching, and I have some bills that. Hi. So it's difficult. I think it's fair to say my organization, Truth Initiative, sits a little bit differently from where Campaign is and where some others are on the perceived harm. Our perspective is that certainly it's a complicated issue, that nicotine should not be delivered to young people, to minors, in any form, whether it's through a cigarette or through a vape pen or whatever other thing that they come up with. So there's that. It's unregulated. There's a lot of work to be done. There's more research that needs to be done. You see, I'm smiling here. There's a lot more research that needs to be done there. What we know, though, this is what we know. Listen, when you got a device, an instrument that has hundreds of flavors, it's not really something that's created for a 60-year-old. They don't, a 60-year-old who has a nicotine fix won't fix it by smoking something called mocha cotton candy. We know that, right? We know that the nicotine inside of the e-juice per se is poisonous and dangerous. I remember I shared this story yesterday. When they first came out, they were primarily, at least first introduced in this country, they were primarily located at mall kiosks across the country. And I remember going up to one myself and the instructions. Here's what the instructions on the box said. It said, use gloves when pouring the e-juice into the cartridge, and if any falls onto your hands, your bare hands, go wash your hands with soap for 10 minutes, warm water and soap, for 10 minutes, and immediately call the Poison Control Center. And we're laughing. But that, I promise you, I'm not making that one up. That's, your mouth is the most, you guys know this more than me, and I could be wrong, but your mouth, isn't it the most sensitive organ on your body, or one of? And so if you got to wash your hands for 10 minutes and call the Poison Control Center, I don't know if you want this anywhere around your mouth, right? It's difficult. What I also know is the vaping community, they're aggressive. They're on it. And they're ready to respond to anything that the public health community does, especially on social media. They will come for you on social media. We're seeing it in even at Truth Initiative, when we post stuff, they're very active out there. It's going to be important for us to dispel myths, whatever they are, and talking about the product and the fact that it shouldn't be used by young people, the fact that it is not meant to be. Yeah, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that one. And I'm sorry I couldn't really answer that one, probably to your satisfaction. But there are a lot of people in the room who can probably speak a little bit more about it. That one was hard.
So we're at our time. Brittany, are you available for questions?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody.